Not to be the bearer of bad news, but a lot of the retirement advice that you hear online could actually ruin your future plans to retire. Today, I'm going to break down 4 popular tips that a lot of financial gurus love to give, and I want to show you why following them without question could cost you big down the line. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. For those new here, my name is Lissa, and I'm a personal finance expert and a certified financial planner. My goal is to make building wealth more accessible so that you can live an abundant life. Quick disclaimer before we dive into those 4 financial guru tips that I want you to watch out for. Here's the thing. Most personal finance creators and financial gurus and experts, most of them mean well. They often share what has worked for them, and a lot of times they have strong opinions or favorite strategies because they've seen those things work. But at the end of the day, what is considered financial advice is actually not just casual tips and guidance and strategies on the internet. Financial advice is actually regulated, and that's why licensed advisors or CFP professionals like myself, we focus on giving education and information, and we don't try to give one-size-fits-all advice. So in this video, my goal is not to tell you what to do and what to not do, and I'm not even here to bash other creators. I just want to help you flex your critical thinking muscles so that you can continue to make smarter, more informed decisions when it comes to your finances and your journey towards building wealth. And if you remember one thing from this video, I think you're going to remember more than that, but if you remember one thing, let it be this. Keep learning and keep questioning things, and your financial choices are only going to get better and smarter as you go. The first common retirement planning tip you may have heard is max out your 401k and you'll be set. By the way, if you're not in the United States, this would be similar to your country's retirement savings plan where you contribute money and it's generally an account that you can't access until later in life. Here's how this strategy works of saving in a 401k and maxing it out. So a 401k is an employer-sponsored retirement plan that some people have access to through their jobs, and it allows you to contribute pre-tax dollars to grow your retirement savings. Pre-tax means you put money in it this year. You don't have to pay income taxes on that money that you put into it this year. You're going to pay it later on. The idea is that the money you invest in a 401k will grow and compound over time. And then when you're finally ready and able to take it out, you're going to pay taxes when you withdraw the money. And that typically happens during your retirement. So why is it a popular strategy to contribute to a 401k and in some cases, max it out? Well, 401ks have high contribution limits that let you save more aggressively compared to other types of retirement accounts. For a lot of retirement accounts, there are tax advantages associated, and because of that, the IRS doesn't want you to put unlimited amounts of money in them. They want to limit it because they don't want you to avoid paying taxes completely. 401k typically allows you to put way more than you could in other retirement accounts, such as IRAs. Another reason this strategy is popular is oftentimes employers incentivize you to put money into your 401k by offering you a match. You put in $1, they put in $1. Or you max yours out and they'll match that by 50% or some other percent. Some experts like to consider that free money, that all you got to do is invest some of your own money and then you get more money handed to you. Another reason this strategy is popular is that these pre-tax contributions lower your taxable income today. I mentioned that earlier, but it does help bring down your tax liability for the current year. And finally, the more you max out your 401k, the faster your retirement savings can potentially grow over time. If you understand compounding and the time value of money, you know that the longer you have more money invested, the more of a likelihood and the faster of a likelihood that your money will grow. So we've talked about what it means to have a 401k and max it out, and also why it's popular. So you might be wondering, what is the downside? Why wouldn't this be a good strategy? Sounds good to me. I want to have a lot of money in retirement. So let's talk about some of the nuances and why you shouldn't take everything financial gurus say for face value. One thing to consider is that 401k funds are locked up until age 59 and a half. If you cash out early, it's usually going to trigger taxes and penalties, and that's going to set back your growth. It might even leave you with less money than you started with, depending on how long you've had your 401k and how much it has grown. Another consideration is if you want to retire early and have more flexibility with your funds, you're also going to need other investments, such as money in taxable brokerage accounts or other types of investments, so that you have access to funds before 59 and a half. The thinking is you don't want to touch the money that's going to have penalties if you take it out before 59 and a half. But if you decide to retire sometime before that age, you're going to need other sources of money to fund your retirement. Another instance to consider not maxing out your 401k is if you have high interest debt or no emergency fund. When you put money into a 401k, as we mentioned, there are taxes and penalties to take it out early. Even though technically your money can be liquid because you can pay those taxes and penalties and get the money out, it's not a smart financial strategy. So another way to look at it is putting money into your 401k makes it illiquid. And so what happens is if you have a lot of high interest debt and you don't have an emergency fund and something happens in your life where you need a big chunk of money, if all of your money is in your 401k and you don't have anything else to pull from, you're gonna be subject to those taxes and penalties if you touch that 401k. And finally, here's one more example of something to think about before following that strategy of max out your 401k. Think about, where do you plan to retire? Some people plan to move outside of the United States at some point in their life or in retirement. And while it's perfectly fine to keep your money in a 401k, even if you live abroad and live somewhere else, you have to be mindful of tax implications. So if you withdraw money from a 401k, you're always going to be taxed in the United States. Remember, you didn't pay tax when you put the money in, the money has grown. When you're in retirement, you're going to take that money out and then you're going to pay taxes on it as if it's your income. But depending on where you live, you might also face local taxes on that same income. Nobody wants to be taxed twice on the same money, and I'm not saying that's the case in every single country. But you should do your due diligence and research tax treaties between the United States and whatever potential country you might live in, just to make sure that you're not going to be taxed double or that there's no special rule for retirement withdrawals. Again, this is not going to stop you from the strategy of using a 401k and even maxing it out if you feel like that's the best strategy for you, but these are the types of things you want to be aware of up front. It's going to help you avoid surprises, and it's going to help you plan the way you invest your money from now until retirement if you can start thinking about these things and making decisions more intentionally. So here's the bottom line. If you're already following this advice and you started maxing out your 401k, again, there is nothing wrong with that. It's totally fine. That is a valid strategy if it matches your goals and your timeline. I just want you to know that it's not a perfect strategy. It's not going to fit in every situation and for every single person. Make sure that you align your investment strategy, your retirement strategy with the lifestyle and the timeline that you want for retirement. All right, let's move on to number 2. Another common thing I always see financial gurus say is Roth IRAs are the best. Open a Roth IRA, or everyone should open a Roth IRA because it is tax-free growth. Now, if you're outside of the US and you don't know what a Roth IRA is, think of it like a retirement account where you pay taxes up front, but later on when you withdraw money and you withdraw the growth of that money, you're not going to pay taxes later. Your country may or may not have an equivalent of that type of an account. Quick side note, most of my audience is based in the US, so that's why I tend to talk about a lot of US specific things. So I apologize for those of you who this doesn't apply to, but understanding the strategy doesn't hurt. A Roth IRA is a type of retirement savings plan that has unique tax benefits, which are what I just described. It's considered advantageous because even though you are contributing to it with after-tax dollars, meaning you're going to pay income taxes on that money in the current year, the growth of your investments are tax-free, as well as your withdrawals in retirement. Why is it a popular strategy to have and contribute to a Roth IRA? Well, tax-free withdrawals in retirement are very appealing to people. People love the idea that if they pay taxes now and then their investments grow a ton over the next few years or decades, they like the idea of not having to worry about paying taxes later on. The money that's in that account is all theirs. Roth IRAs are also popular because they generally do not have these things that are called RMDs, required minimum distributions. So required minimum distributions are these minimum amounts that you have to withdraw from your retirement accounts every year once you reach a certain age. The IRS has these rules for certain accounts that have RMDs because they don't want you to avoid paying taxes forever. So think traditional IRAs and 401ks. At certain ages, there are certain rules that say, all right, you can't just hold on to this money forever. We want you to take withdrawals out because we want you to pay taxes. This doesn't apply to Roth IRAs because you're paying the taxes up front and not later. This is a benefit because it gives you more flexibility on how and when you withdraw money later on in retirement. If there's some years you don't need to withdraw anything, you can just leave it in there. Roth IRAs are also great for younger earners who expect their income and tax rate to go up over time. The thinking is if you are in a lower tax bracket now and you pay taxes on this money and then your Roth IRA grows and then you start to climb tax brackets because you're making more money, maybe later on when you start taking money out of your Roth IRA, you're in a super high tax bracket. But guess what? You don't have to pay taxes on the money that comes out of that account. So that's another benefit and reason that people like Roth IRAs. So if Roth IRAs are so popular and have these great tax advantages, why wouldn't it be the perfect strategy for everyone? Let's talk about some of the nuances and examples of why you should think about your own situation before you listen to these financial gurus that have this blanket advice. Number one, tax timing. So this is the opposite of what I just described. What I just described was if you're in a lower tax bracket today and you pay taxes, your money grows, take it out of the Roth IRA later, and you don't have to pay taxes even if you're in a higher tax bracket. The opposite also applies as well. Let's say you are in a super high tax bracket today, and when you retire later on, you're in a lower tax bracket. When would you want to pay taxes? You would want to pay taxes when you're in the lower tax bracket. Now here's where things get tricky and even more nuanced. It's almost impossible for us to know if we're going to be in a higher or lower tax bracket decades from now. And additionally, we can't predict what the tax brackets are even going to look like that far into the future. So there are a lot of factors to consider, but you do want to think about this. You want to think about tax strategy aligned with how you approach your retirement planning. Another nuance and something to be mindful of, Roth IRAs have contribution limits as well as income restrictions. So Roth IRAs have lower contribution limits than 401ks, and they typically change year after year, but there is also an income phase out. An income phase out means if you're a high earner, you make a lot of money, and you are above the phase out range, you might not qualify to contribute directly to a Roth IRA. If you're part of that group, so let's say you make a ton of money, you're above that income phase out, and you decide, well, I'm going to contribute to a Roth IRA anyway. That is bad news. You don't want to do that. That can trigger IRS penalties and also require you to withdraw the ineligible contribution, meaning you can't use it. It's all bad news. You don't want to mess with the IRS. Now, quick side note, there is a legal workaround for high earners if they want to put money into a Roth IRA. It's called a backdoor Roth IRA. The gist is that you contribute money to a traditional IRA, which is a pre-tax account, and then you convert that contribution to a Roth IRA, which is a taxable event, and then now you'll have money in the Roth IRA, and it's all done legally and above board. Another thing to note is that these are the policies at the time of me making this video, August 2025, but various things related to taxes and retirement accounts change all the time. Policies change, so these are things you always have to pay attention to, and you have to check in to make sure that your strategy is still working and aligned with your future goals. Last example of a nuance that I want to cover as it relates to contributing to a Roth IRA and that is time horizon. If you are inching closer to retirement, sometimes paying taxes up front to put money in a Roth might not give you enough time and years to grow tax-free money. Meaning a huge benefit of putting money in a Roth IRA is to let that money grow so that later on, all that growth you have doesn't get taxed. But if you have a short time horizon and you're not going to give that money enough time to grow, you might not get a lot of benefit out of that tax advantage. So here's the bottom line. If using a Roth IRA is currently part of your investment strategy, I'm not telling you to stop. I just want to draw attention to the fact that there are nuances, and it's not just that everyone should have one because it's the greatest account ever. You always have to check if this is what's smart in your own situation. Are you thinking strategically about taxes, about retirement in general? Do you know whether or not you can even contribute directly to a Roth IRA? If navigating all these things on your own feels overwhelming, you can always also talk to a financial planner, like a certified financial planner, or a tax planning professional. These are questions that you want to ask sooner than later to make sure that your whole strategy is above board and, of course, aligned with your longer-term goals. We got 2 down, 2 to go. Real quick, if you're enjoying this video and you're learning something, make sure you hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, because I got a lot more content coming on the way and I'd love for you to be part of the community. Number 3, another common piece of retirement advice that I see is save 10% to 15% of your income and you'll be good. Meaning, as long as you save 10 to 15% of your income, you'll be on track for retirement. Here's how this strategy works and why people like it. So this is a rule of thumb. The idea is that if you consistently save 10 to 15% of your income, that's going to give you enough money to retire in your 60s. It's a popular strategy because, first and foremost, it's simple. It's simple and memorable. For a lot of people, saving and investing is not easy to do. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how much they should invest. And if they have a clear rule of thumb and something automated, it makes it so much easier to stay consistent and stick to the plan. You set up that contribution and let it run on autopilot. A rule of thumb like this is also popular because it encourages early saving and it builds good habits, right? If you know that all you got to do is this one thing and you'll be on track for retirement, that thought gives you peace of mind and motivation to keep saving. And of course, it can work well if you start young and you stay consistent. While none of us can predict the future market returns, history shows us that long-term, consistent investing has the potential to grow significantly over decades. So if you have this strategy for decades, it makes sense to me why it's so popular and why people feel confident in it as a retirement plan. But as I hope you're starting to see, there are nuances. Why wouldn't this rule always work? Number 1, this rule of thumb, 10 to 15%, it assumes that you're going to be saving for decades. This rule was built for someone who starts really young and contributes to their retirement steadily for 30, 40 years. If you don't start saving for retirement until later on in life, or maybe you want an early retirement, you don't want to contribute until you're in your 60s or 70s, there's no guaranteeing that 10 to 15% of your income is going to get you there, right? You have a shorter time frame, so depending on the type of retirement you want, you might have to beef up your savings. Another nuance is that this rule of thumb doesn't account for real life. There are so many variables in real life. Are you living in a high cost of living area or a low cost of living area? Do you want to take career breaks or sabbaticals at some point? Or are you going to work that entire 30, 40 years? And something that happens in real life is your needs and wants change. I couldn't tell you the person I was 5 years ago, and I can't predict who I'm going to be 5 years from now. I can tell you how I might picture my retirement as of today, but that could change. Maybe right now I want a luxurious retirement, but in a couple years I stop caring about luxury and I just want a simple one, which means I don't need as much money. Or it could be the opposite. It could be that I foresee a very chill retirement, not a lot of expenses, but then the older I get, maybe I want to travel more and I want to do bigger things that require more money. All that to say, a rule of thumb is not going to take into account the type of lifestyle you want to have in the future. So a rule of thumb simply isn't a plan. I think it can be a great starting point, but ultimately, goal-based planning is better. This would mean calculating what you actually think you're going to need in retirement for the type of lifestyle you want. Then you can reverse engineer your savings rate to meet that goal. And like I said, we can't predict what the markets are going to be like, but this is what financial planners do for a living. They model it out. They help you figure out how you can reach those life goals. Bottom line for this one, a rule of thumb like 10 to 15% of your income is a great habit starter. Like for example, if you've never saved for retirement and this rule of thumb is easy for you to understand and do, then do it. But as you continue to build wealth, you should know that your savings rate and your investments should be based on your goals, your timeline, and the lifestyle you want now and in the future. It's rarely enough to just save on this one-size-fits-all rule of thumb because there's not a one-size-fits-all type of retirement. On to the last piece of common retirement advice from financial gurus, and that is once you hit your number, you're done, you're good. So what this means is some people calculate what's called a magic number or a retirement number, which is a dollar amount that they're working towards saving and investing, so that once they have that magic number, the idea is they can retire. Many people calculate this magic number using what's called the 4% rule. There are other online calculators that calculate this in different ways, but the 4% rule is a popular one. So the 4% rule is this guideline that helps people calculate how much they think they need to save and invest for retirement. Here's how it works in practice. So for example, let's say you think you can live off of $40,000 per year from your retirement savings. You would need roughly $1 million saved and invested between now and retirement, because 4% of $1 million is $40,000. So your magic number would be $1 million. Once you have $1 million saved and invested, you could retire and start taking out 4% from your retirement account every year. In the second year, let's say inflation is 2%, you would increase your withdrawal to $40,800. So this 4% rule not only gives you a target savings goal, but it gives you a framework for how to adjust your withdrawals to maintain your spending power over time, to give you that regular income during your retirement. So here's why it's popular. Very similar to the rule of thumb that we just mentioned about saving 10 to 15% of your income, the 4% rule is another rule of thumb. People love it because it gives this clear, simple target to aim for. Once people know what that number is that they need to aim for, it's going to be more motivating to save and invest towards that number, knowing that once they hit that number, they can retire and they don't got to work anymore. The 4% rule is also a widely shared rule of thumb and easy for most people to understand rather than complex retirement planning calculations. And because of that, it's very motivating and concrete for people who want to save, so it works for a lot of people. But by now in the video, you should know that none of these strategies are great for 100% of people. So let's talk about how this strategy can be risky to rely on. Let's talk about some nuances. So first and foremost, hitting your magic number, that retirement number, does not mean you can just go on autopilot and live by that 4% rule throughout your retirement. What you need to know is that calculating that magic number has a lot of assumptions built in. It has assumptions of how much your investments are going to grow, as well as assumptions about general economic stability. In real life, planning for retirement is dynamic. You can't just pick one number, get to that number, and then think you're set for retirement forever. You don't know how much your investments are actually going to grow now and during retirement. You don't know what things are going to cost in retirement. And like I mentioned earlier, you might have different plans now than when you hit retirement. Maybe now you think you can live off $40K in retirement, get to retirement and you realize you love traveling, so you actually need $80K. It's just something to keep in mind. Between market swings, inflation, costs of healthcare, and other unexpected expenses, all of those things can eventually change your needs. So the 4% rule is limiting in the fact that it's not dynamic. Retirement planning is not simple. It's typically very complex. So I can understand why a simple rule of thumb works for people, But it would be irresponsible for me as a financial planner to not point out that you actually have to do some planning to make sure that you do have the best plan in place to get you to the retirement that you want. Bottom line here is, let's say you've used the 4% rule, you've calculated your magic number, and that motivates you to save and invest. That is great. That's a great thing. I'd rather have you do that than nothing at all. Oftentimes, simply having a goal and a milestone number to aim towards is enough motivation for people to strategically plan for their finances. But what I've reiterated over and over again is retirement is not a set it and forget it thing. One strategy can't work for every single person. At the end of the day, you're gonna want to stay flexible and do regular check-ins to make sure that your retirement goals and your life goals are on track. And again, this is one of those things that if you're not sure how to navigate this and you want to make sure you're doing things right, you can always consult a professional for help. So before I wrap up the video, let's just do a quick recap because we covered a lot. Here are common pieces of retirement advice that you might see floating around the internet, but I want to give you a reminder of what to keep in mind. So number one, max out your 401k. This is great for tax savings and growth for your retirement. But what you want to watch out for is your money is locked up until age 59 and a half. You want to consider having other accounts and other investments for more flexibility, especially if you want to retire early and because having money in other places helps build your financial foundations. Number two was that Roth IRAs are the best, right? Always choose a Roth IRA. Roth IRAs are great because tax-free growth can be powerful for many people. But what you want to watch out for, first and foremost, is knowing for sure that you qualify to contribute directly to one, right? Do you have earned income and do you fall within the income limits? And then another thing to think about on whether to utilize pre-tax or post-tax accounts is to think about tax timing. Like I said, we can't predict what tax bracket we're going to be in, and we don't know if the tax brackets are going to change by the time we retire, but it's still something you can take into consideration. Number three, save 10 to 15% of your income. Is this a great starting habit? Yes. Is this a great motivator for a lot of people? Yes. But something to watch out for is it might not be enough. If you start saving later in life, or if you want to retire early, or if you want like a luxurious lifestyle when you retire that is going to cost more than your lifestyle now, these are all things you want to take into consideration as you decide how you're going to plan for retirement. And finally, number four, this is on the 4% rule. I actually didn't realize that the 4% rule was number four, but this is about once you hit your magic number, you're done saving for retirement. So yes, having a target goal to save for is motivating. I'm not going to deny that. I think it's a great starting point, and if that motivates you to save for retirement, then by all means, calculate your magic number. But the thing you need to know is that retirement is dynamic. There could be market swings, inflation could change, there could be a change in your own personal goals, and that means ongoing planning is very important. You can't just assume that that 4% rule is going to work for your situation. All right, I hope this video was helpful, and until next time, peace out.